to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her latest successful title defense, Senecia Estrada withstands a tough challenge, outpoints Leonela Yudica, and retains the 105-pound belts. This took place Friday night by way of Top Rank and ESPN the night before yesterday's big welterweight showdown. I knew coming into this fight that she was a boxer. She was going to move away from me, Estrada told ESPN's Bernardo Osuna in the ring. She doesn't come forward much, so preparing for this fight, I just knew that I had to show something different in my style. I mean, my last fight, I fought a good champion who came forward and was aggressive, and I easily outboxed her. And with this fight, she's a boxer and a mover, and I showed, that I can fight any type of style because my style is versatile.
Put that on file.
That rhymed. The prediction stuff. Senecia Estrada won on points the way I said she'd win on points, though not exactly.
This was a much tougher fight than I anticipated for her.
It seems to me that Senecia got off to the start I expected her to get off on, coming in hard and fast and looking to overpower Leonela Yudica, who was using her feet, using the ring, moving around and attempting to create space on the receiving end of many combinations at the start. But somewhere around there, she realized that she could take Senecia's power.
Having success with good counter left hands and good counter right hands.
It was a thoroughly entertaining fight, and it seems to me like Leonela realized that not only can she effectively counter Senecia on her way in and on her way out, but she could take Senecia's power. So you saw Leonela take more chances than she normally does.
Because she's really not an action fighter. She's more of a boxer than a puncher.
Usually she is. Leonela herself stated, "I don't agree with what the judges put forth on their scorecards. And just look at her face. Nobody's hit her the way I've hit her. I can promise you that. And if she wants to show her face, why doesn't she take off her hat so we can see how much I hit Senecia Estrada?" And I believe what Yo Castavalle said. You know what? Now come see me where I fight. Because if you really want to be a true champion, you've got to leave your hometown.
Unbeknownst to most, Leonela Yudica normally campaigns 2 divisions north at minimum weight. Perhaps that's why she was able to take Senecia Estrada's best punches, because she is a naturally bigger woman than Senecia.
She moved 2 divisions south of flyweight for this fight, down to minimum weight, and there were questions as to whether or not that would affect her punch resistance, her ability to take a shot, because when you boil down,
you cut too much weight, it'll kill your punch resistance.
Leonela Yudica, the former IBF flyweight champion, now campaigning as a minimum weight, was just as durable, if not more durable, as a minimum weight than she is as a flyweight, and that really took me by surprise, as was the
gamesmanship, the aggressiveness. Try and understand that normally Leonela's a cerebral fighter and a boxer, a mover. She doesn't usually take chances and step into her punches. She works off the counter. With Senecia, she was a bit more ballsy.
And I think, at least in part, that's because she was having a lot of success with the counter left hooks and the counter right hands, and she was able to take Senecia's punches, able to take her power. Senecia's miscalculation in this fight, if she looked human at times and got caught flush, I think it's because she was misjudging the distance,
thinking that she was out of range.
When she wasn't. Leonela was noticeably taller than Senecia and longer. So while Senecia's thinking she's out of striking distance, out of Leonela's striking distance, not quite. And she paid for it a couple of times. It was the most human I've ever seen her.
And the judges had this fight wider than I did. I had the fight 6 rounds to 4 in favor of the champion, in favor of Senecia Estrada. Say 6 rounds to 4 to maybe 5 rounds to 5.
A draw. Under the right circumstances, this could have been a draw.
It's not a knock on Senecia, by the way. Leonela Yudica is no squirrely amateur. Even if the boxing community at large is not quite familiar with her, she's a very experienced fighter, a former champion who's been in there with some stiff competition, so credit to her.
Argentinian fighters, Argentinian champions. You often hear me say that Argentines are as tough as old boots. They're as tough as they come, and that's what we saw this past Friday.
Senecia definitely looked more human with Leonela than she normally does. A part of that was misjudging the distance, the height and length of Leonela Yudica being taller and longer than Senecia and being a counterpuncher.
In tandem with Senecia Estrada's patented switch hitting, like Terence Crawford, Senecia Estrada is a fighter that likes to transition from orthodox back to southpaw, back to orthodox seamlessly, at least most of the time. But in this fight, that was actually used against her. That moment.
The moment she's switching, there's a moment of vulnerability to where she's off balance.
Leonela Yudica was mindful of that. But what makes Senecia Estrada, one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, is that she was able to adjust to Leonela's adjustment, countering the counters in the second half of the fight, realizing
that Leonela was setting her up.
The way it was. Leonela Paula Yudica realized certain things in the early goings of the match and made an adjustment, made a decision to be a bit more aggressive and let her hands go a little more than she normally does, and she had success with that. In turn, Senecia Estrada adjusted to Leonela's adjustment,
judged the distance a little better in order to counter the counter, realizing that Leonela was hanging back at times to set up counter shots. Senecia was able to bait
and switch. She was able to get her to throw so she can counter what she throws. In essence, countering the counter. A very dominant 10th round for Senecia Estrada, who did a bit of showboating as well.
Like I said, I had it 6-4 in favor of the champion to a draw.
The fight was a lot more difficult, a lot more competitive, and a lot more arduous for Senecia than I initially anticipated, though I did go with Senecia to win a points decision, and that's what she did.
She had to work for her money on Friday.
Not quite the lopsided fight, the lopsided beating I anticipated, but still the right outcome.
Seems to me that things are going to get difficult for Senecia as she moves up in weight over time.
Around light flyweight and flyweight, those fighters that may have a height advantage over Senecia and a reach advantage
might have to judge the distance a little better to stay out of trouble.
Because Leonela Paula Yudica, you can take a flush shot from her. She's not a puncher, though if she had a bit more power, a bit more mustard on them shots,
could have been ugly, very ugly for Senecia Estrada.
She still pulled out the win, adjusted to the adjustment, and reminded people why she's one of the sport's best pound-for-pound fighters. More work needs doing beyond the Leonela Paula Yudica fight.
Congratulations to her for a successful title defense.
Just in keeping with the theme of this weekend's action, Isaac Cruz shakes head at split decision. I don't know what the judges thought they saw. He was opposite the ring. Giovanni Cabrera
looked terrible.
Looked every inch the limited and protected fighter that I'm always telling you he is. But he stated, I don't feel like he connected with any punches, but they are the judges, and they made the decision, Cruz said. I was superior all night, but I do respect all of my opponents, and he was very good today. Cruz admits to being frustrated with Cabrera's style during the contest.
And what kind of style did we see from Giovanni Cabrera? We saw a moving target, a guy who's fighting on the balls of his feet, looking to catch the smaller man coming in.
He made Isaac Cruz miss a lot of punches due to the height differential. Giovanni Cabrera being a lot taller than Isaac and longer than Isaac, fighting on the balls of his feet and moving around. Isaac missed a lot of punches, and because Isaac ain't got nothing semblant of a jab to jab his way in,
he just throws hooks. He just throws looping shots.
Isaac Cruz is a mid-range to inside pressure fighter. In many ways, he has to be, because he's on the much, much smaller end of the spectrum as far as lightweights go. He doesn't have the physical dimensions to be any kind of fighter.
Any other kind of boxer, an outside fighter.
Outboxer, he doesn't have the physical dimensions to be that kind of guy. He has no choice but to be a come-forward, aggressive pressure fighter. He continued, I was frustrated a little. He thought it was my birthday because he was hugging me all night, Cruz said. I don't know what the judges thought they saw, but the important thing is that I won. Cabrera's height didn't frustrate me as much as the fact as I was coming off a considerably long period of inactivity. That's not an excuse, though. I still won.
Yeah, he can play off not being frustrated, but there were many moments in the clinch, at least two that I remember, that Isaac was quite deliberately trying to headbutt Giovanni Cabrera.
You could see it in the clinch. Many moments when Giovanni's tying him up, Isaac is trying several times.
Several failed attempts at a clash of heads.
Deliberate attempts, egregious attempts to perhaps open up a cut on Giovanni or something with the top of his skull. Isaac Cruz seemed very much frustrated to me.
The Mexican slugger believes that a potential rematch would have a different outcome, a rematch with Gervonta Davis.
How many times have I told you that's what this guy's whole career is about? He's not really trying to become a champion or take on the other good fighters at this weight. All his focus is on getting Gervonta Davis back in the ring, saying, I respect Gervonta, and at the same time, I'm sure that I will have the opportunity to redeem myself. When that opportunity comes, I'll be ready.
The Isaac Cruz that I saw yesterday gets beat by Frank Martin.
Isaac is too simple a fighter, too simple a brawler, a pressure guy.
That even as far as pressure fighters go, he's rough around the edges. I think a better pressure fighter, more educated puncher, would have to be Mexico's own William Zepeda, who's over there on the Golden Boy promotion side of things.
I think that both Frank Martin and William Zepeda would beat Isaac Cruz, and I think that Shakur Stevenson would toy with him.
Shakur Stevenson, who Isaac Cruz says he's a great fighter, but he's a little bit overrated.
The knife of this guy, if he's so overrated, how come when a WBC ordered you to fight him, you decided to turn tail, go the other way?
If you were being outmaneuvered by an unknown commodity in Giovanni Cabrera, what would a world-class fighter, a world-class operator do to you?
He wants to stroll into this division as if he's accomplished everything, but in reality, he's got to earn his diligence, said Isaac in reference to Shakur Stevenson. That was ahead of this Giovanni Cabrera fight.
Now, Isaac being a pressure fighter, under normal circumstances, that gives you a stylistic advantage over a pure boxer. But that's provided that you're on the level. There's the style the fighter uses and at which level he operates with it. Isaac!
I can tell you right now that Isaac is not an A-level pressure fighter. I don't even know that he's a B-level pressure fighter. Seems more like a C+. He's got his virtues. He's got some power. Good engine.
Being from Mexico City, that's a given. Mexico City being at high altitude, many fighters that hail from Mexico City have good engines, and he seems to be able to take a punch.
Decent chin, but he's nothing special.
Pretty raw. Still pretty rough around the edges as far as pressure fighters go.
So if you get him in there with, say, a B-level pure boxer or a B+,
him being a C+ pressure fighter, that pure boxer might beat him. They might, because while Isaac has the right base style for the job, he ain't got all the tools, all the ingredients.
Not that I expect him to share the ring with Shakur Stevenson. I don't. He's circumvented quite a few fighters to get to this point because his sole focus seems to be fighting Gervonta again. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets his wish.
He might.
It's not like Gervonta's about to fight Shakur, right?
Right.
The truth is that Isaac Cruz's claim to fame isn't a fight that he won, a high-profile fight that he won. It's a fight that he lost. A moral victory. But being able to go the distance with Gervonta Davis does not make him an elite-level fighter.
Still lost.
That's his claim to fame. Nothing he's done in the subsequent months that followed that fight proves that Isaac Cruz is on the level.
That's why he looked like that yesterday.
Reference to the main event of that same show, Terence Crawford on an immediate rematch with Errol Spence. He said it definitely doesn't have to be at 147 pounds. Confirmation of what I told you guys ahead of the fight, that in all likelihood, both the winner and the loser of the match would end up moving up to junior middleweight as a new era of welterweight action embarks. It definitely don't have to be at 47, Crawford said when asked about their rematch during the post-fight press conference. Like I said, I'm in the hurt business. Making 47 was kind of hard for me, too. I was already talking about moving up in weight and challenging Jermell Charlo, so 54 wouldn't be out of reach of anything.
I don't think Errol should activate that rematch clause, though if he does, and they were to end up fighting again before this year is out, Errol Spence would have to be courting retirement.
So many disillusioned boxing fans holding out hope that Errol Spence Jr. can return to his winning ways as a junior middleweight, given the shellacking that he just took at the hands of Terence Crawford. What serviced as confirmation of what I already thought, that this guy's punch resistance is waning.
He shouldn't activate that rematch clause.
It's something I've got to talk to my management about, Spence said, but hopefully it's at 154. If he were to run it back, I told you in my previous video, he'd lose that fight too. So he really has to question, do some soul searching as to whether or not he really wants to run it back, or should he lick his wounds and try to recover the best he can, because he got hit a lot yesterday.
Got dropped 3 times.
PBC fighters are often associated with long stints of inactivity, lengthy layoffs. This is one situation where one would be warranted, because a fight like that takes a lot out of you.
Years.
It's always difficult, Spence said. But like I said, I don't make excuses. The better man won tonight.
If Spence has any hope of rallying back and resuming his boxing career, getting back to his winning ways, he should steer clear of Terence Crawford, and he should not activate that rematch clause.
It's just me being honest. At I remember a long time ago, Errol Spence Jr., in his own words, said that he's here for a good time, but not a long one.
You have to question a fighter's desire when he says things like that. I think he showed heart yesterday, picking himself up off the canvas. He wouldn't stay down.
But as resilient as he tried to be, it was a losing effort, a lopsided beating. And that's the kind of beating that takes years off a fighter's career, takes something out of you that you cannot get back. So if Errol Spence Jr.,
if he wants to keep boxing, he needs to rest, recover, and regroup.
Forget about Terence Crawford. As far as Terence Crawford, the winner of the fight, the two-time undisputed champion in the four-belt era, immediately after the fight, unbeaten up-and-comer Jaron Boots Ennis, his mandatory by way of the IBF, expressed an interest in facing him, facing the winner. I don't think that fight is going to materialize. I think Terence is going to move up, and in all likelihood, maybe he fights Tim Tszyu for what could soon be the newly vacated WBO title. It's a fight that makes a lot of sense to me. The chance for Terence to become a 5-division champion and what would be a more high-profile fight than, say, a Jaron Boots Ennis fight.
Yeah.
Jaron Boots Ennis, as talented as he is, he ain't worth no money yet. He's not worth in America what Tim Tszyu is worth in Australia.
Tim is a bona fide pay-per-view attraction in his own country. He quite literally has a country behind him. Jaron Ennis doesn't.
And I've nothing against Jaron Boots Ennis, but the facts are what the facts are. If you're Terence Crawford, a 3-division, 3-time lineal, 3-time Ring Magazine, 2-time undisputed champion in your mid-30s,
you're not going to let the bullbirds and the sourpusses that might have picked Spence to win, you're not going to let them influence you into doing what they want. You've already proven them wrong.
They thought this guy was better than Terence, you know? This guy that was never in that fight, never once in that fight, never once made it competitive. That's what they were saying for 5 years. So what they say 5 years later,
they're saying now don't matter. I've no doubts that you'll see an influx of Jaron Ennis fans, Jaron Ennis supporters, now that they don't have Errol Spence Jr. to prop up.
Need I remind you that Jaron Boots Ennis, and he's a great young fighter, I've nothing against him, a bit of movement gave him fits. Just a little bit of movement from Karen Chukatsian. A couple of pivots off his jab.
Just imagine if Karen Chukatsian had Terence Crawford's countering ability, Terence Crawford's stopping power, if Karen were the kind of finisher that Terence is. I don't have a doubt in my mind that Terence Crawford could ruin Jaron Boots Ennis. He could derail his career before it even starts.
Bluebirds won't tell you that, though in truth, I don't expect the fight to happen. I think now that Terence has taken care of business at welterweight, taken care of the biggest name there, he's gonna move up.
It's only right.
But I don't know that it'll be for a Spence fight. I mean, if Al Heyman is gonna give Errol Spence Jr. any kind of advice that he could use because he is his advisor, he would steer him away from that rematch. That rematch could end his career.